This is Azal, and I'm with Tahiya here, and we are going to have a great Ask Me Anything session about data and machine learning. So, welcome everybody. Um, I'm just going to set the stage up by asking Tahiya to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Tahiya. I am a senior engineer on the data and machine learning team. I work mostly on the machine learning side of things, and yeah, I'm excited to be here. So thanks for having me.
What is your background?
My background, I didn't really know about computer science until I started college. So I took I really liked math. Someone said that I should take a computer science class. I took a computer science class. I really liked it. I thought I was really good at it. So I started getting more involved in computer science, but was really interested in like technology for society. So I started joining research labs at my university, more focused on like Internet of Things and how that pertains to sustainability. And eventually, like through working in the Internet of Things space, I got connected with a professor who did robotics. And so then I did robotics research for him for a little while. I worked in a lab in San Diego, and then I went to graduate school for machine learning and robotics. And then I joined BM. Yeah.
That's awesome. That is a great background. My second question was going to be how did you get into robotics engineering, but that kind of explained it. Can you explain how machine learning is applied in robotics? Because they're technically two separate topics.
Yeah, so smart machines, robots collect a lot of data, and machine learning is the process of taking data and making models out of that data. So in machine learning, you look for some correlation or some pattern within the data that you have. And specifically for robotics and smart machines, we're getting this data on device. And so, yeah, that data machine learning pipeline is what our team does at VM.
Mm-hmm. Do you only do machine learning with images, or do you also do machine learning with other types of data?
Yeah, right now within VM, our machine learning platform is focused towards image data. So, how we can make things like an image classification model or an object detection model out of data. But in the future, we're moving more towards a more generic system where you could take data from components and also feed them into machine learning models.
That's awesome. So, if I want to make a project for the community challenge and it's like, I want to detect my sister and do something specific with that trigger, I would use the machine learning.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. My second question is, what are some of the biggest challenges one faces when integrating machine learning into robotics, IoT, or smart systems?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think it is natural to feel like a lot of the problems specific to data are somewhat solved within IoT, smart machines, robotics. But in a lot of ways, that sphere is quite unique. The scale of data that you're receiving from and the scale and the fidelity, so like the different types of data that you're receiving from these systems is so vast. And I feel like that is fundamentally different from how we get data from other sources. Another really interesting problem is that from different components, so say you have like an arm, a temperature sensor, a camera, all part of a plant watering robot. That data is correlated because they're all coming from the same device. And so understanding how to piece that data together and make it accessible for the end user without having to sift through, hundreds and hundreds of data points is unique to smart machines and robots.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I'm seeing a question in the chat. How long have you been studying and applying ML?
Yeah, how long have I been studying and applying ML? I started taking machine learning classes as an undergrad. So probably 10 years at this point. In the past, like 3 or so years, I feel like machine learning has accelerated so much. And so I'm just like constantly learning new things, and there are definitely lots of domains that I have yet to even explore in machine learning.
I'm seeing another question. In my idea, my plan is to use Google Gemini API in place of ChatGPT's API with a VM server to create a chatbot. Do you support Gemini API and Azure API?
So right now, natively, we do not support Gemini API and Azure API. We do have the example that I think you're referring to, but there's also the opportunity to create your own module that uses these APIs itself. And I feel like that would be a really good chat submission for the challenge.
Yep. So just to give a little bit more information about the VM registry, we do have a registry where anything we don't natively support, you can write support yourself. This could be components we don't natively support. This could be services. And this is a great example of how you can create a module that supports those APIs. And then that by in itself could be a great submission for the challenge. Awesome. Let's continue. This section of the questions will be about the world. The first one is, can you share some of the most innovative applications of smart machines or machine learning you've seen or worked on?
Yeah, a lot of cool things going on right now. One thing in particular, my former colleague and friend actually worked on or works on. If you're in Chicago, it's currently at the Science of Museum in Chicago. And she also had a write-up in Science magazine. She works on building robots that are micrometers wide. So they're really, really tiny computers that you could only see under microscopes, and they're able to actually swim through the medium that they're in.
That's
so
awesome.
Really pushing the boundary of robotics.
That's super cool. My second question is, what are the most impactful ways you've seen ML used to solve real-world problems?
The most impactful ways? Yeah, I mean, I think recently there has been a very big surge of using large language models, LLMs, in robotics. I feel like that has really opened the way for more lay people to be able to experiment with robotics. I think it's been historically a bit inaccessible for people to become involved with robotics because it requires so much domain expertise. And so honestly, just seeing like the proliferation of people without like really technical backgrounds being able to use robotics, I think is very incredible.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we recently partnered with a company, and we're, for example, like that's a great real world problem. They're using machine learning to identify a certain type of whale population and then allow the yachts and the boats to not hit them, or like make sure that the marine ecosystem is like regulated around that specific type of whale who's potentially going to get extinct. So I think like just the classification and detection side of ML is very useful in terms of solving real world problems.
No, totally, yeah.
How do you approach data management in robotics, especially considering the vast amounts of data that robots can generate and consume?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we at VM really emphasize like how powerful database like querying and cloud tools can be in managing data. So in robotics, previously, like the way that you stored your data was either on device or in like a very custom way. Having data management tools that let you do things that we kind of take for granted in software engineering, like query them or manage them in a cloud infrastructure, I think kind of bridges this gap between robotics and software engineering that has kind of inhibited robotics from becoming productionized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I sometimes accidentally leave the data capture open in my robot, and I see like 2,000 images in my data management side of the platform. And I'm like, oh, I've been taking photos for the last 10 minutes. And it is important to find a way that you can approach that vast amounts of data and understand something
Totally,
intelligently from it. And these upcoming questions are VM-specific questions. How has it been working on the machine learning and data parts of the VM platform?
It's been really fun. So as part of my background, I worked specifically on how to build machine learning models for teams of robots. And so I feel really lucky to have such continuity in like kind of the niche thing that I studied. So that's been really fun. I'm obviously biased, but I can't say enough praises about my team. My team is super collaborative, and there's a really big mix of people who have expertise in databases, cloud services, more like the machine learning ops and infrastructure side of things. And so for me to be able to learn so much from such a like smart and collaborative group of people has been super helpful, especially in an extremely multidisciplinary field like robotics. It's nearly impossible to know all of the different facets that go into making a smart machine. And so having that type of really varied expertise has been really great.
I mean, I think it's a very like cross-collaborative team across other teams too. I know that you work computer vision team, and I think our solution engineers always build demos using the data ML side of the platform. So that's awesome. I'm seeing another question. What are some ways you use ML in the past?
What are some ways that I've used ML in the past? A lot. So in the past, I designed algorithms that basically take data from a team of robots that aren't allowed to share information with one another, and they build maps of the environment. So they try and build some type of representation of the environment, and then once they're online, they try and share those maps and build like a global view of the environment. So that's like a lot of the work that I did in machine learning.
That is awesome. That's a very cool project. Another question, what are some of the most unique problems you and your team worked on at VM?
At VM? I think managing data from these different components at scale is a really hard problem. And it's something that we're still actively trying to streamline. So just like how users can have a good experience in being able to access and use data from many different data sources.
Mm-hmm. What is the vision for the data ML service at VM in the next few years?
In the next few years, I think building out tools I'm personally really excited about building out tools that make machine learning really easy for the layperson. I think we've started to build some of the skeletons of that, but just making it easier and easier for people to do things like import annotations for data sets or curate data sets for specific problems, or have just like a really robust set of models that people can use for different common smart machine problems, I think is what I'm really excited about in the next 5 years.
That's awesome. My next question is about tech. Data collection is crucial for training machine learning models to improve robot functionality. Could you walk us through the challenges of designing and implementing systems capable of capturing and managing high-quality data?
Yeah, I mean, that is definitely most of what our team does.
Doing it.
Yeah, some of the challenges are things that I've mentioned, like working with data, like large amounts of data, working with data at scale, dealing with issues of like connectivity and low bandwidth, I think are pretty unique to robotics. So what happens like if you're on a farm and you're not connected to the internet for a long time, or if you're in places where your connection is
Sounds like
poor, yeah, dealing with these types of issues, being able to support like all of the possible components that people have in a way that's like generic and still allows flexibility, I think is also really important.
That's awesome. I always wonder, like, oh, what happens to my data if my robot loses connectivity? But as far as I know, whenever you gain the connectivity back, it automatically saves everything.
Correct.
up.
Yeah. So once you're reconnected to the internet, that data will automatically sync again.
That's awesome. Few ethics questions. With the rapid advancements of machine learning and robotics, ethical considerations are becoming increasingly important. Could you talk some about the potential concerns and how we as a team could mitigate them?
Yeah. I mean, I think in the next 5 to 10 years, there will just be more devices everywhere. So think of how, in the past 5 to 10 years, tons of people have more smart home devices like Alexas. And I think that'll just continue to happen. Obviously, there are some security and privacy concerns with collecting that amount of data and specifically collecting data on people. I think that's something that I care deeply about. It's important that like people have agency over the data that's collected about them. I think that has to do both with how the data is being collected and also like government oversight and how that will play out. At VM, like the person who is collecting the data is responsible for the data. VM doesn't own that data. So yeah, concerns about privacy. I think as a company, like we could take a hard stance on how we protect people and their data. And then obviously smart machines have the capacity to do good, but they also have the capacity to do bad things. Like they can be potentially used in war or other negative environments. I think it's important to like take a position as a company to empower people to do good with the technology. And so just continuing to do that.
And then there's like a lot of conversations around machine learning and bias. So if you just like train a model on just certain type of skills, certain type of genders, then your model will innately be biased towards a group of people. So making sure that the training side of the data is also very transparent and ethical. That's like very important.
Totally. And I think there are a lot of people that are concerned about fairness specifically in machine learning, and a lot of work is going into how to approach fairness in a systematic way. And I'm excited to see how people approach this in the future. I don't think we have a good answer now, but it's comforting to know that people are working towards this. Yeah.
Another question that's a little bit about the future of AI, so not even just the team. How do you see the role of AI and machine learning evolving in the field of robotics over the next decade?
That's a great question. Yeah. I have honestly been very surprised with how impactful large language models have been in robotics in the past 3 years, which is kind of wild to think about. We usually have this like loop that we talk about in robotics that's called the perception, planning, and action loop. So it's like perception is how robotics or smart machines see and reason about their environment. It's what they see, what they sense. Planning is like how we make decisions about what we're going to do. And then action is like the steps that you actually take to execute whatever you've planned. Specifically in planning and actuation, I feel like LLMs have made a huge difference in how we think about robotics. So for example, in planning, like a lot of planning often traditionally would happen in like a really geometric sense. So like the way that we're reasoning about the environment is both specific to the robot and also in a geometric space. So we're thinking of like how to plan in this 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional world. With LLMs, we can take a lot of that planning and move it into a space that's more intuitive. So like a space with words, which we sometimes refer to as a semantic space. So was this paper, I think it's called Say Can, that's the abbreviation, where it looks at planning and says like, okay, we have these text commands. How can we then discretize these text commands into things that robots can do? So say I like spilled coffee, I need help. The robot itself doesn't have the set of tools to reason about that sentence. But if you were to take that sentence and discretize it into tasks that the robot can execute, then they could help you with your problem. So this algorithm basically takes like a prompt that you give it, discretizes it into tasks, and then says like, how likely is this robot actually able to execute this task, which is very cool. And previously you would have to build like robot specific models of how and where this robot is how and where this robot actually is, and build a set of models and tools specific to that robot's environment and skill set. Now you have this like super generic way where you can just say like, give me language commands, give me like roughly the capabilities of the robot, and it'll be able to do this type of matching.
So it's basically like if I have a kitchen bot and I can say, this is where the desk is, this is where the cloth is, I want you to grab the cloth, come to the desk, maybe use a computer vision to detect where the spill is, and then wipe it, and then put the dirty one in a dirty area where then you can clean the cloth.
Yeah. So whereas like before you would have to enumerate all the steps for the robot, using something like LLM and this algorithm say can, you can just give a command like, I spilled coffee, I need help, and it'll enumerate those tasks for the robot to actually do.
That is super cool.
Yeah.
That if that becomes the norm, that would be very interesting and very nice. The next 2 questions I have is about career. So for someone looking to start a career in machine learning and robotics, what foundational knowledge and skills are essential?
For machine learning and robotics, definitely helps to have a strong math background. And this is more for like pure machine learning versus applied machine learning. I think now with applied machine learning, just like having a solid software engineering background and some math skills really helps. I think for more like pure machine learning, having a solid math background definitely helps, and also knowing statistics. That being said, there's like tons of information online now, like just so much information, amazing videos. So for anyone that's interested, I feel like watching videos, reading blog posts about papers, lots of papers have blog posts now, really helps.
That's awesome. Do you have a place you go to when you want to improve your skills in a specific area? Like, do you have go-to sites or?
I try and read papers that have code and blog posts associated with them. Honestly, it's very hard for me now to even find the time to read papers that don't have those. YouTube is a great resource. And also, I've been using Reddit a surprising amount, but if you search like great resources for like X paper, if it's popular enough, a lot of times people will like have a Reddit thread dedicated to good resources. So it's always helpful to kind of like outsource where you're getting that knowledge from.
And my second question is, what has been the most significant learning experience in your career?
The most significant learning experience in my career. I taught high schoolers robotics and AI. I feel like that really helped me explain concepts at a high level, which is really important. Like, it's very easy to get into the weeds of something and not be able to like articulate the higher level vision. I feel like that was really helpful. High schoolers are also notoriously just ruthless, so it also taught me to not take anything personally in the work environment. Yeah.
That's awesome. I have a specific like challenge related question, which is, as you know, the subject matter we have in hand is machine learning and AI. So adding AI capabilities to a device that you may have in your house, it can be a laptop, it can be a Raspberry Pi, it can be a smart home automation device, and basically adding machine learning capabilities to it to make it smarter. What type of a project or a robot or device would you build if you were joining the challenge?
If I was joining the challenge, I read a really cool paper called Code as Policies, which basically you give this model, this algorithm, an API, so something like VM's API. You say like, here is the documentation for this API, and then you give it prompts. So you say like, pick up this orange, and it'll give you the commands from that API that correlate with how to actually do that command. So if you say like, pick up orange, it'll say like, get detections from the color detector for the color orange, and then like move arm to like this position or something. So that's definitely a very ambitious project, but I would love to do that. Yeah.
I was thinking of like a fridge smart device where a camera sits inside your fridge and then it could tell you, oh, you're out of tomatoes. Or like you can be in a grocery store and then you can like peek at that camera and be like, oh, I don't have eggs, I should do that.
Yeah.
Or similarly, like maybe it can like keep the data around like what you have and then give you, like using large language models, give you recommendations on like what you can cook with that item. That
or it makes the grocery list for you.
That would be very cool.
Yeah.
Now that we're talking a little bit about LLMs, we do have a very exciting live stream next week about LLMs, and one of our developer advocates, Nick, he is Live Laugh LLM with Nick. He's presenting a really cool project where he used large language models with plants and plant identification. So please make sure to sign up for that one too and register and join us. It's going to be very fun. But also, this is the end of my questions. So if you have any questions, please send us in the chat so that I can ask before the stream is over. I'm going to be reading. Do you have anything else you want to add? Anything you think that we didn't cover and you would like people to know about?
No, I feel like we covered a lot. Yeah.
This was a very interesting talk. Thank you for all of your answers and sharing your intense knowledge with us. How is your day-to-day when you come to work? Like, what do you usually do?
Yeah, so our team has a pretty flexible schedule. I'm like a big morning person, so I usually come in pretty early. I have like a snack or a second breakfast and some coffee. I am currently working on a machine learning project where you'll be able to take your own training script, so code that you've written to train a model and be able to train it within VM, which I'm really excited about. So I do a little bit of coding. Sometimes I have meetings with my team or other teams about the projects that I'm working on. I review a lot of documents and other PRs for other people, have lunch in the afternoon, a little more coding, and then I usually go home, go to the gym, relax.
That's awesome. Great. I see some thanks in the chat, and thank you to you for joining too. I think we are ready to wrap up unless there are some other questions. Otherwise, you should go to our community challenge landing page and see what else you would need to submit properly for the challenge itself, but also we're offering office hours with our developer advocates. So if you want to find time on Nick or Matt's calendar to debug your project, to work together, ask questions, get inspiration, please do so. And we're always available on Discord. You can ask us anything you want, challenge related, but also non-challenge related.
Cool. Thank
Cool.
you.
Thank you so much.